Hello, everyone. My name is Azuz. I'm a PC44 alum from Iraq, joining you from Chosen today. So nice to see everybody. As you join, please take a minute to use the chat to introduce yourself and share your connection to Pearson. And for alumni, be sure to add your PC year or UWC affiliation as part of your name. And we'll, yeah, and we can start now. We'll ask Phoebe to go ahead and pick it up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Phoebe Mason, and I'd like to begin by offering a warm welcome to our students, parents, and supporters who are joining us online today. We're so glad that you can make it to our first Global Village update of 2024. We're joined today by current student Nathaniel from Prince Edward Island, who I would now like to hand it over to share our territorial acknowledgement.
As Phoebe said, my name is Nathaniel Stewart. I'm from Prince Edward Island, but I am also Indigenous from Nahanni Butte, Northwest Territories, Dene Decho Territory. The land in Canada, United States, Turtle Island, used to be ours as Indigenous people pre-colonization, and I understand that it is important to acknowledge the land that we speak on at Pearson College as the land of the Shianu Beecher Bay First Nation, who cared for this land and continue to care for this land through today. And we appreciate our time that we are able to eat, play, learn on Beecher Bay First Nation.
Thank you, Nathaniel. You'll have the opportunity to hear more from Nathaniel later in the program. It's wonderful to see so many of our community members on the call. And before we dive in, I'd like to take a minute to formally introduce myself, as I'm surely a new face to many of you. I'm the new Alumni Engagement Manager, and at Pearson, I was previously working with the National Committee of Canada and also with Pearson's Host Family Program, so it's possible I've had the chance to meet some of you already, perhaps even in person. I'm full of gratitude to be living on Pearson campus, especially as it reminds me of my home back in New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada. Like Pearson students, I also had the opportunity and the privilege of the UWC experience and attended the Mahindra United World College of India, or MUCI, as it's affectionately known by its students and alumni. And I'm looking forward to learning more about the differences and similarities between Pearson and MUCI. Today, we'll get to hear from our new head of college, Jason McBride, and learn a bit more about him and his vision for Pearson College. Jason will also be sharing an exciting update on Pearson's Renew and Refound campaign. After hearing Jason speak, we'll have the time for some questions submitted by you in advance of this Global Village update and look to answer a few more. So please go ahead and share your questions in the chat anytime, and we'll answer them in the Q&A portion. You'll also have the chance to hear from two of our current students about their lives on campus before we close out. I would now like to welcome Jason McBride, our new head of college, to introduce himself and tell us more about what inspired him to lead at Pearson. Hello, Jason.
Hi, everyone. How are you? It's wonderful to have people on the call. People have registered from Mexico to the Philippines, Australia to Barbados, and all across Canada and around the world. So it's nice to have everybody on here as alumni. It's also really nice to have lots of other people. I see the Maccabees have joined. I see Jeffrey online. So our village updates really are of the global variety. So we're glad that many members of the community have been able to join. And we had a number of current families that were on the call this morning. And I assume that there's somebody out there today that has a student who's currently with us. So thanks for joining. My name is Jason McBride. I have had a chance to meet several alumni over the course of the last 6 months of being here after arriving in late July. My family and I moved here on July 30th. My wife joins me with two children, ages 12 and 14 right now, so a little older than some of the previous heads, which makes things a little bit easier in a job that doesn't really stop after school. It just keeps on running, so it's nice that my children are a little bit more independent. Originally from Toronto, born and raised in the Jane and Lawrence neighborhood, so a very multicultural part of Toronto, which was good preparation for the life that was to follow, and then eventually landing at UWC. I was educated, both of my undergrads were in Ontario. And then when I graduated from Teachers College, I wanted to go on an adventure. I had just finished the international education program at Queen's in Kingston, Ontario, and decided to go for a 2-year adventure to Abu Dhabi, which in 2000, 2001 was not something that a lot of people had heard of. I went there for 2 years and my wife and I ended up staying for 14. Dubai and Abu Dhabi were growing at an immense rate, and being there at that time and being able to start and create schools from scratch was an unforgettable and almost a situation that you couldn't recreate anymore. The city and the country the cities were growing so fast that there was a lot of room for input and to help nation build in that regard. So went for 2 years, stayed for 14. After that, we thought it was time to come home with our children, who were, I think they were 4 and 5 at the time. And we settled on the West Coast as a better fit for us than going back to Ontario. We love big nature, we love mountains, and so Vancouver was home. And unfortunately, after being home for just a few years, UWC came knocking, and the opportunity to go and found UWC Thailand was something that was an opportunity that came up. And it matched my sort of public school socialist leanings with my desire to continue working in international education, and especially the idea of providing scholarships for students who, to making sure that access wasn't an issue. So went to UWC Thailand, got that school up and running. Was a beautiful K-12 experience with the UWC model. We'll talk a little bit later about the differences between a 2-year model and a 14 and 15-year-old model. But I love my time there. That campus really focused on mindfulness, social emotional learning, and elements of that we've been able to bring to the Pearson campus. After spending the 4 years in Thailand, there was a school in Malaysia who had been approved for a preliminary approval to become a UWC. So we moved to Malaysia, and then the worst of COVID hit and really changed that project. So the UWC International stopped the idea of school expansion. So the school in Malaysia was no longer going to be able to be a UWC. And around that same time as that decision was made, Pearson was looking for its head to follow on from Craig. And the time just seemed right to come home. Our daughters have been putting some pressure on us to come back to school here. They're both in grade 7 and grade 8 right now, but they wanted to come back for high school. The chance to take everything we had learned overseas about intercultural understanding and how to educate in a multicultural environment, to come back to Canada and provide that not only for my family, but continue my sort of personal and professional love affair with UWC was an opportunity we couldn't pass up. So all of that led to July 30th landing here and right into reunions. I had only met a couple of the staff. I hadn't met any students or any faculty, but I started meeting alumni right away. And when you think about what the differences are between Pearson and other schools, alumni really are at the top of that list. It is an incredibly engaged alumni group. They are critical, but almost entirely in a good way. They want to make sure that the mission stays pure while we keep evolving and changing the model. And I think a little bit today is talking about what things will continue to change and evolve, and what things we really sort of double down to maintain in our next 50 years as we hit that 50-year mark. So I think one of the questions that I often get asked, or I have been asked over the first 6 months, is what do you want to change? And sometimes that question makes me shake my head, because if I came in wanting to change a million things, then I probably shouldn't have taken the job in the first place. The reasons I joined were our work around reconciliation. I felt like that's one of the ways that UWCs around the world, and Pearson in particular, are putting the mission, the peaceful aspect of our mission at the forefront. So really proud to come into a school that recognizes that we need to do better moving into the future, to not replicate mistakes of the past, and own our faults and find a way to build relationships to move forward together. And the CALD program, the fact that the CALD program was launched during COVID is absolutely a miracle. The fact that there was, schools around the world were barely keeping things together, as many of us went through situations that were really isolating and difficult. And it was amazing to come here and take on the continuous development of a program that really does, again, put our mission at the forefront. We are committed to IB school, committed as an IB school, and it's still a big part of who we are. But the CALD program is us putting our foot forward as a UWC that is unique on the planet, with a program that doesn't exist anywhere else. So pretty excited about that. In terms of things that we want to continue to change, that'll kind of come up as we work through the next couple of slides to talk about what the Refound and Renew campaign have enabled us to do, as well as taking a look at the future. But I think the big part of the overwhelming theme is two things. One is to deprivatize what we're doing at Pearson, and deprivatize means to make public. So for us to not be educating just 210 students on campus, but to be turning that model inside out, so that we can do the second thing, which is to have an impact on the wider Canadian fabric and global fabric. For 50 years, we've done a great job of bringing students, a diverse collection of students to us and giving them an amazing experience. But we want to make sure that the next 50 years focuses on ensuring those students have an explicit skill set to navigate the 21st century, to go and have an impact practice while they're here on the outside world already, and make sure that they carry those skills and competencies and attitude and commitment forward as well. So yeah, we'll look forward to unpacking that a little bit. So the rest of today, that's my intro. I'm going to stop there because I don't like talking about me. I'd rather talk about students and program and faculty and alumni. We're going to do a bit of conversation about the campaign because we do have an incredible announcement to share with you. And then we're going to talk about the 50th before we get to the Q&A. So Janine, you ready to hit the slides there? Eventually. There we go. So even taking on a $40 million campaign, I wasn't. I was in Thailand when this kicked off, and I remember the team at that time thinking that it was kind of crazy, and it was, because Pearson had never run a campaign before. Obviously, philanthropy has been important to the school for the last 50 years. At that time, I think around year 43, 44, the idea of starting a campaign for $40 million was pretty crazy. And really, it's only when you try to do crazy things do you actually accomplish amazing things. And we're really, really excited because that $40 million campaign turned into 41.2 million reasons to be really proud of what this team has done. So we surpassed that $40 million target in late August. Carly, Theron, who I'm sure many of you know, Kim working in the background to collect the funds, and other team members who have come and gone, and the current team that's here, have enabled us to tell a story about who we are and who we want to be that continues to resonate with donors. So to those of you who have been generous with your time, your connections, and your money, it is greatly appreciated. It's an amazing number to hit, and Carly and her team should be really, really proud of the work that they've accomplished, along with the rest of the team here too, that has to brainstorm what can we use the money for, and how do we tell a story that our fundraising and philanthropy team can go out and help us to leverage. We've raised money for almost 450 scholarships over the course of the last 6 years to continue allowing us to bring in a wide variety of countries and nations and cultures from around the world. We're currently sitting, I think right now, 98 nationalities this year with 209 students. Of that, 50% of our students are on full scholarship. 24% are on partial scholarships, most of them being quite high scholarships still. And then 24% of our students are full fee payers, which is just a reflection of a slightly changed model in order to keep paying for things into the 21st century. We remain committed, and the board is adamant that we do not drop below full 50% of our scholarships. And over the course of building the endowment in the coming years, we will try to keep that fee paying sort of percentage as low as possible, while recognizing that economic diversity is also a key factor in making sure that our communities are as diverse as possible. So pretty happy there, pretty happy to be able to continue this crazy idea from 1974 about bringing students in from all over the world. And we continue to be able to do that, even if the price of doing so has changed significantly over the years. So thank you so much. One of the things that we raised money for is it enabled us to start our Climate Action Leadership Diploma, or the CALD program. This allowed us to bring in and create a position for Emily, who you see here in the blue shirt in the middle, as the director of that program. It allowed us to partner with other universities to offer university level courses in sustainable leadership or other sort of elements that are connected to our competency model. And our model for CALD works a little bit different. It is competency-based, which means the program is designed to build explicit skills, to create opportunities for students to build explicit skills that are the ones that we view, and Royal Road, that the program was designed after their master's program, as a way to ensure that our students know how to take action. So it's not just philosophical, but it's very pragmatic. And the program is designed to create opportunities for them to be able to practice those skills while they're here. The CALD program would not exist without the funding that was provided through the Renew and Refound campaign. So we are thrilled to have started a new program. And again, started during COVID. I mean, keeping things together was hard enough for this team, but to start a brand new program, the first of its kind worldwide, it's pretty exceptional. So thank you. Our Truth and Reconciliation, or our our work around understanding our relation to land and to one another, like I said at the beginning, is really the outward extension of the peaceful elements of our mission, of our shared mission across the UWC movement. Understanding what it means to self-locate, about where you are from, who you are connected to, who came before you, and our responsibility to those long into the future is it's a pretty incredible thing for us to put at the forefront. You know, the programs here, the curriculum and the academic program are really challenging, but it's all these other elements that we weave into the program that continue to make UWC special and unique. It is not just another international school. It is a school committed to the ideals that we share with the 17 other schools and colleges. And our truth and reconciliation work is truly a big part of that. The money that was raised through this program allowed us to create our first reconciliation action plan, to hire Rebecca as our first director of Indigenous initiatives, to not only support the recruitment of Indigenous students from across Canada, but to support them while they're here as well. And it's work that's ongoing. It is not linear. Most relationships don't go from A to B to C. They're sometimes circles, they're sometimes backwards, but our commitment is to making sure that we are good neighbors and honoring the land that we are on, building our relationships with Chanu and with the wider Indigenous communities across not only southern Vancouver, but as Nathaniel said, here on Turtle Island. We'll stop. Campus renewal is something that we are very excited about as well. I think the students who were here even more than 5 years ago don't know what the old rooms look like, and the alumni that come back to stay for reunions, I'll always say that have said in the 2 that I've been here that the students don't know how good they have it, and that's a good thing. We were able to tear down the walls in all of the residences down to the studs, as Ty would say, as the Deputy Director of Operations, and completely sort of gut and renovate our student housing, as well as putting mini kitchens into each of the day rooms, which is a wonderful way for students to bond or make a home cooked meal that reminds them of home when they're feeling pretty distant. So the ability to renew this campus as it comes to 50 years of age, it was almost entirely built in 1 year. There weren't too many buildings added after about year 2. And those buildings are all hitting the 50-year-old mark at the same time. So replacing all the roofs and taking care of the infrastructure, the high voltage lines, the fire alarms, all of those things are hitting 50 at the same time. And for those of you who have hit 50, you know that things start to wear out and give out. So we need to make sure we're taking care of the building. We are also starting on a project from money that was raised during the campaign to renovate the Anne and Tony McCowan Theater, or the LLT as some people know it, and turn that into our social innovation lab or social innovation hub. And the idea is to use that to, as I was talking about earlier, to deprivatize what we're doing here, connect our students with the wider world, not only across Canada, but across the world, to have conversations related to the things that are most important to us as a school: peace, sustainability, reconciliation, and climate. So creating a special space for students to think and learn about holding those conversations as we do in calls, but for all of our students across all 210. Working with architects now to sort of kit out the technology to make sure that it's a great space for student connection, but it's also a flexible space so we can use it in many different ways. So we also, I think Carly will holler at me if I forgot something later. She'll be like, you should have reminded them about X. And I think one of those is the science lab. So we had a chance to renew the science labs to modernize them a little bit as well. So if I've missed something else out, Carly can add it in at the end. Renewal of the waterfront. These are not our sea lions, but clearly being able to take care of our relationship with Race Rocks is an important one for us. It's something that we've been in charge of for a very long time, and we were able to finally upgrade the infrastructure out there as well, adding solar, adding more water storage, and we're about to take ownership of our new marine landing vessel, which was on the back of donation by 3 key donors who enabled us to take ownership of that. It is in the final stages of being prepared right now, and should be delivered in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And then after we go through the licensing with Marine Canada, we'll be able to get it out there. We're pretty excited to have a boat that has reverse gear in it consistently, because the current one, reverse, seems to be quite tired. And I think Greg is tired of piloting a boat in the forward direction only. But we're really happy to continue to have our Eco Guardian presence out there, and continue to give back to the BC coastline by being the guardians of that space. So thank you so much for everybody who donated to make that possible. And thank you really is the sort of final element of this campaign celebration, because we had an incredible uptick in first-time donors, which is incredible because we were able to either reconnect with alumni who had either drifted away or hadn't yet given. And that's really, it's really important to the future of the college. Nobody understands how transformative this process can be better than those who went through it themselves. So to those who donated, and again, those who made connections for us, those who gave time, folks who served on the campaign cabinet, tons of ways that people were giving and generous with their time and their money. And we really do appreciate it to continue to offer this opportunity for the next 50 years. So there will be a detailed impact report that comes out fairly soon, still putting finishing touches on it, and it will go out in order to celebrate the impact that this campaign has indeed had. And again, just to hold Carly up and her team, the incredible work they did, accomplishing what they might not have thought was possible, and now proven that the bar has to go to 200 million for the next campaign, Carly. So you can put that. We're recording this, I think, right? So this will live on in perpetuity. Okay, but stay tuned for what comes next. What comes next is related to the next slide, because this has been talking about our present. We've looked backwards at the last 50 years, but the next 50 years is something we're pretty excited about as well. Campaign comes to a close at a great time as we celebrate coming up to our 50th year, which for us, we're marking as August 2024 will be the start of our 50th year. And we have multiple ways to celebrate. If you see the icon on the left-hand side, there's 4 different layers to it, which represents different elements of nature. The 3 lines in the middle weave together alumni, faculty, staff, and students. We put faculty and admin together, just so you know I'm not coming up with 4 things. And of course, we are Pearson College and continue to be a very proud member of the UWC movement. This idea of unite, inspire, and act is the byline that we're using as a way to capture what the essence of a UWC has always been about. Uniting is about bringing together deliberately diverse students from around the world in all the different ways that diversity is represented on this wonderful earth. While they're here, we hope we're inspiring. We hope they inspire one another. We hope the faculty and program inspire them to then do that third word, which is to act. When we talk to students here about you don't need to go and overthrow a country, although I think some of our students are ready for that as well. But acting can be being a great human being, taking care of your own carbon footprint, taking care of your neighbor. But that can be all the way up to inventing the next desalination machine or becoming the next prime minister of your country. So as long as we are acting based on the inspiration that we feel by being here and being tied to the mission and values, then that's exactly what we're trying to get out of the UWC experience. In terms of experience for everybody, there's multiple ways to celebrate. We hope that people will attend reunions that are coming up. I believe it's number 10 and number 40 coming up in August of 2024. And then in August of 2025, we have the 20th, 30th, and 50th reunions. So at some point over the next 2 years, about the next 18 months, we're going to be hosting 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50-year anniversaries, which is incredible. We're going to open those up, I believe, to folks from those years or from the neighboring years, and then anybody else who wants to join. So if you want to come back to Pearson College, then by all means, there's going to be an opportunity for you to do that. If you can't get here, we want to make sure that during that 50th year, so from August 2024 until May 2025, we're going to be gearing our special topics days and our global affairs and our UWC day around alumni and the impact that they've had, tying them to the campus and the students that are here right now. So if you want to participate as a guest speaker, we'd love to connect with you and hear about the ways that you're having an impact and that you're taking this idea of unite, inspire, and act out into the world. We're also looking at a do-it-yourself program, which is a way to host your own gathering worldwide. We have alumni and board members around the world who have said they'll host something not necessarily in the Victoria area or across Canada, where we have a number of events that will happen, but gathering some people together, either current or actual alumni or like-minded people for whom we can spread the UWC mission and idea to. One of the things about UWC is we are excellent at talking to people who are already in the club, but we don't talk to people very well outside of the UWC community. And we really want to use our 50th as a way to accomplish just that. So if you're interested in hosting your own gathering, stay tuned in the next sort of couple of months. And we're going to have a DIY kit so that you can introduce the UWC concept to other people around the world. And the last one is sharing your stories. So over the course of the 50th year, we are going to be looking to grab snippets of the way that Pearson has impacted the world, how it's impacted individuals, and how we hope that it continues to impact Canada and the Canadian fabric and the global fabric as well, moving into the next 50 years. So it has been an incredible 50 years already. Half a century is a pretty significant milestone when you talk about being 5 decades old. And we're pretty excited to stop for a moment, celebrate that, and then do a lot of work to figure out how do we impact the future even more than we have been able to do in the last 50 years. So I think that's the end of the slides, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and I turn it over to Phoebe, I think, who's gathered some questions and put me in the hot seat a little bit here at the end of the day on Petter Bay.
Yes, thank you, Jason, for sharing all of those exciting updates. We will now take a few moments to answer questions that have been submitted by our alumni and supporters in advance of the GVU, and we'll also make time to answer a question or two from the chat, so please feel free to go ahead and drop those in now. But to get us started, Jason,
Yes,
soon you'll be returning to your former campus of UWC Thailand for Congress. And can you tell us a bit about what you're hoping to share about Pearson with UWC Network, and what are you hoping to bring home from Congress?
Yeah, going back to visit your old school where you were the head is a little bit like watching somebody else raise your child. So while I'm looking forward to getting back there and connecting with all the people who I still have such great relationships with, it's always interesting to return to the place that you used to call home in that regard. For me, like I said, coming here, going from one place with the UWC mission to another has been really comfortable. And so going back to Thailand, I think the one thing that I'm going to take back is definitely this focus on the CALD program's explicit skills that enable our students to take action. Because I think one of the downsides, and this comes about from conversation with other heads, we're working together on it. There's a subcommittee for the international office that's taking a look at our educational model. And we're looking at whether or not the model is still really relevant in the 21st century. And what we're finding is that the model, the pieces that go into the mix are still quite valid, but maybe the outputs aren't clear enough for what we're trying to accomplish with students while they're here. So taking back elements of the CALD program and the way we make things explicit around students learning facilitation skills, communication skills for difficult dialogue, the way that they're sort of prepared to take action by being given opportunity to practice those explicitly is something I'm going to take there, because I think in Thailand and around the movement, we probably haven't done that well enough over the last sort of 50, 60 years of UWC's experience. And then bringing back, I think from Congress is we're always stealing others' ideas, right? We go and take a look at what people are doing. There's lots of portions of Congress that are set up to share different practices. One is getting together groups of students to talk about what's going on around sustainability on other campuses. So when you go and there's 17 other schools and colleges, you usually end up bringing back more than you gave. But that's the power of the collective as well, right? That's why we work as a movement together. So going there and seeing some things that other schools are doing around the climate sustainability space, particularly around what they're doing on their campuses to make sure that they're reducing their own carbon footprint, are things that I'm looking forward to bringing back.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. How can national committees and Pearson College best collaborate to support the vision for the next 50 years of the school?
When you first join a UWC, the two things that really stand out are the national committee system. And when you first come across it, you're thinking, hold on a second here, we're not really in charge of the students we recruit. And that as a head of school, that's absolutely key, because if you're not in control of the students who are coming into the school, you're never sure what you're going to get. And then after the anxiety drops a little bit, you realize that the national committee system is actually one of the most spectacularly unique elements of the UWC movement, right? Having 155 or so national committees around the world finding students that are a great fit for the mission, we used to use this term promise and potential. We don't use that as much anymore, but the idea still stands, right? Students who want to have an impact are aligned with that mission. That's actually wonderful, because it's not something we could recreate as on our own as an organization. So my encouragement to the NCs would be continue to hold that bar high in looking for students that you think are going to be a great fit for a UWC in terms of they want to make change in the world. And that doesn't always mean that they're the most progressive or liberal. I think sometimes people think that if you're not a liberal progressive at a UWC, then you don't fit. you can still be conservative and not have your values run over somebody else, right? We need multiple perspectives. Otherwise, it's all groupthink anyway. But we want the NCs to really make sure that they're finding students who are a great fit, that they're open-minded, that they come in ready to share, ready to learn, to challenge their own assumptions, and then either validate why they felt the way they did when they came in, or change their mind, because that's what we want them to do as adults out in the world as well. So keep finding those great students who are mission aligned. That's the biggest ask.
Thank you. So far, today we've been looking ahead to the next 50 years of the college, but what is Pearson prioritizing today to start moving in the direction of some of these longer term goals?
Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit already, is about that explicit focus on skills. I think Arno is the current Deputy Director of Academics. He and I, Emily is the Director of CALD, have been sort of teasing out, replicating CALD on top of the diploma program would be incredibly difficult. There's not enough hours in the day, and you'd need everybody to modify what they're doing in class in order to deliver what it is that we're kind of coming up with. But picking 3 or 4 skills and then focusing the learning of those on genuine opportunities to lead dialogue on and off campus, both in person and virtual, are the way that we're thinking about sort of amplifying our impact. One of our teachers too, Andrew Sewell, has been working with Michelle, one of our outdoor instructors, on ramping up our community engagement as well, partially because it took a dip during COVID, but also because service has been something that's been tough to do here in an isolated location. So we're looking at different ways, different relationships in order to get our students off campus and really engage with the wider world. Because 210 students on campus, great, but we really want to make that impact more public, so that we're not just, when alumni graduate, the first rude awakening they get is when they leave Pearson and realize that the whole world isn't this, utopian ideal. And so the more we can do to blend Pearson with the rest of the world, we're going to amplify our impact, but also have the students remain ready to operate in a world that might not all hold the UWC values up high. So I think that's the way we're looking at it, is doubling down on what we already do, but making sure that the outcomes and the opportunities are more explicit, so that 210 students leave here with the skills necessary to thrive and make change in the 21st century and beyond. That's
Thank
one
you.
way. Yeah.
Yes, one of many. So we have a question from the chat. An alumni shared their recent conversations with co-years and classmates in anticipation of the reunion in August about elitism at UWCs. And I was wondering maybe if you could speak to how UWCs are trying to face this challenge as international boarding schools.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think sometimes this idea of, well, it depends on what you're talking about for elitism. If you're talking about elitism as the sort of the students with money or the students who come from humble backgrounds that are mixed here, that problem has always been, or that challenge has always existed, right? Even when we were 100% scholarship, even though people didn't really know that person was on 100% and that person might pay a little bit, the reality is there's always been economic stratification. What we do talk about, and most of this comes through our college assembly, which is our student leadership, is talking about excessive displays of wealth, right? Because part of creating an atmosphere, and we're not perfect at this by any stretch, but if we want to create an inclusive atmosphere, being aware of the privilege that comes from having more money than somebody else might is a part of creating an atmosphere where everybody feels like they belong. And that doesn't change when you leave Pearson. So we want to make sure we practice that now. A big part of that is travel. So the students who come from, let's say 3-hour plane ride away, they could have the ability to go home every month or so if they wanted to fly home on holidays. But the reality is, we want them here full time to get the full experience, because weekends and evenings are when a lot of the UWC richness exists. But also, too, we don't want there to be a discrepancy between those who can't do that and the ones who can, right? So that's the way we're kind of dealing with it, is to talk about it as a way to not show off, but to increase belonging and inclusion. And again, it's not perfect here. By, if somebody's wearing a fancy pair of running shoes, who has money and who doesn't. But for us, it's more about setting the groundwork so that there's a level playing field for sort of opportunity, but also practicing our ability to reach across stratifications that happen with socioeconomic diversity.
Thank you. And our final question is if a fun one, if you were to lead a CAS or an extracurricular at Pearson College, what do you think it would be and why?
When I got here, one of the first conversations when the faculty arrived was Garth, who oversees our CAS. If you know Garth, he is just this big head of hair. There's always a smile under there. You just can't always see it because it's stuck under a beard. But Garth is running our CAS program, and he said, "What do you want to get involved in?" And I said, "My worry in my first year is I'm going to get pulled in so many directions. I'm not going to be able to be there consistently." So I said, I won't do anything formal this year. And we'll kind of leave it at that, right? So I don't think he smiled at me under the beard under there. I don't think that time was a smile. I think it was a grimace. But that's how it's turned out. Is there are so many things that pop up. I would hate to cancel stuff over and over again. I don't think that's fair. So I've taken a pass in my first year. However, my job, my main sort of activity is working with the college assembly. So we meet every other Monday, and that is the rotating student government that brings issues forward from house meetings or things that have happened on campus. So they have a direct line to the head of college for us to discuss, not always making decisions, but where that decision should get made, because we have students on the operations committee, the education committee, the experiential committee. So often we see where an issue needs to be sort of put out there and then help them with that process. So that's every other Monday. So that's kind of my CAS. But when people ask about CAS, usually they're referring to sort of experiential ed. And for me, we're talking sort of over the back half of this year on what do we do to make sure that we ramp up the level of experiential ed opportunities on weekends. And for me, that's usually hiking and mountaineering. So that's a way that I plan to get involved. But this first year, you're drinking from a fire hose, which you get really wet, but you're not sure a lot goes in. And even though I hit the ground running as a previous UWC head, I just knew that it was my schedule was going to be so inconsistent that it would be hard to provide one after school. So short story long, hikes, mountaineering, putting kids on the top of mountains is the plan for perhaps the back half of this year, but definitely in 24 or 25 and 24 and 25 as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason, for taking time to answer questions from our alumni, our parents, and our supporters.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who shared questions in the chat. If we didn't have time to get to you today, don't worry, we will follow up and share an answer with you soon after the GVU. Next, I'm happy to introduce two current students who would like to share their Pearson experience with you. And I am pleased to introduce to you Escarlyn. Escarlyn is a year 50 student who is taking part in the Climate Action Leadership Diploma.
Hello, as Phoebe said, I'm Escarlyn Mora. I'm from the Dominican Republic, a country in an island in the Caribbean. And I'm very grateful for being in the Chicano people territory today, sharing with you about my experience in the Climate Action Leadership Diploma. For me, it's such an honor being here and being able to have the opportunity of studying the UWC experience and being part of the CALT program, because in my country it is not like that easy to access to this education, like very good education with international students, and most with this kind of programs where there is no like this conventional education where you can like get bored or you can forget everything, because the CALT program is such an experience. Like, it has marked me a lot as person and as student. I've been able to connect with land. I didn't know what this means until I got here. I I am I am exposed to connect with indigenous knowledge through the gifts that our like elders come here to share with us. For example, Uncle Yo, and I really something that really impacts me about this program is that I'm able to have like the education, connecting with all growth, connecting with the species, and learning about like the environment, making kinship with it, for advocate for like to advocate for it. Because what we have learned in cult is like if you don't connect with the land, if you don't connect with the water or the species around you, it will be very difficult for you to advocate for them, because like you'll be like advocating for something that that you don't heal with. So the cult program for me is like opening this whole world of knowledge, because like I think that I am like here with the cult program, I am building myself to be more like an agent of change, but a connected agent of change with land, with water, with everything around me. Like we've learned from the traditional ecological knowledge that we are not external to like the environment, we are a whole, and we need to build this kind of like symbiotic relationship with it, and we have to be reciprocal, we have to be resilient with the environment. So like I'm very grateful with all the donors and all the people that have made this like possible, because for me it's very important coming from a country like where most of the families are low income families, and it's like very meaningful for me to being able to have this access to this wonderful way of learning. Like is amazing. I can say that I'm not the same person that came here 6 months ago, because I have evolved a lot, and I know that all my peers have evolved a lot with this program, and I hope that a lot of people could be able like to have like this experience as we could. So thank you very much for all of your support, and thank you.
Yes, thank you, Scarlett, for sharing your story with us. I'd now like to re-invite Nathaniel to share a bit about his Pearson experience with us. Nathaniel is a year 49 from Prince Edward Island. Over to you, Nathaniel.
Hello, as Phoebe stated, I'm from Prince Edward Island. That's a small place, a very culturally homogenous province, especially in Charlottetown. And coming to UWC was pretty eye-opening, with us having over 100 countries represented, with me going to sleep with the Brazilian to my right and an Ecuadorian to my left. It's definitely something that I could have never imagined about 2 years ago before I had heard about UWC. And one of my favorite things about being here at Pearson is the kind of forced proximity. There's 200 people on campus, and of course, I can't get along perfectly with all of them. There are some people that maybe a little differences between them and I, but because I'm just always around them, either it's in a class or an activity or just walking to the cafeteria, I'm always going to be seeing them. So no matter what, I'm not going to live 2 years avoiding someone, not really talking to them. Instead, I'm going to find something that we relate on, like a dance, like something that we're in together, talk about that, talk to them about that, build a bridge, build a relationship, even if it's not something perfect. It doesn't have to be. It's still building that bridge, making a good experience out of the entire 2 years that I'm here. Another thing that I absolutely enjoy, one of my favorite parts of Pearson, is project and cast weeks. This year, I was lucky enough to go to Bamfield with the first years on what we did as an action week, where we all went up to this community on Vancouver Island called Bamfield, and a large part of it involved reconciliation and different forms of that. For example, we attended a reconciliation symposium at a traditional longhouse, which is a huge house built out of these huge cedar trees. Nothing I've ever seen before. Eye-opening. I was looking around wide-eyed, trying to take pictures. And also toured a ancient village of the Huayet people of the region called Keehan, which was just incredible. I was walking in living history as something that UWC and Pearson always tends to support. since I arrived here, I know I've been able to practice my culture as an Indigenous person. Last year, I was able to participate in a couple of sweat lodges, which is a ceremony of cleansing and healing that I was very involved with back home. And now I'm able to be involved with, and I plan to organize some for the rest of the year. I'm also part of the Reconciliation Action Plan work group, which is a newer initiative as part of our reconciliation program at the college that is led in part by Rebecca Beauchamp, who I believe was mentioned earlier by Jason. Her and I are very good friends. It's another thing I like about Pearson, that all of us seem to be very close to the staff. There's no divide, which is very different than from back in Prince Edward Island, where of course there was a large deal of respect between a teacher and a student, which is the same thing here, but there's more of a personal connection. Even just coming here and hearing teachers being called by their first names, it was a huge culture shock to me. And I really like it because it allows me to be very comfortable with asking any question, with being myself around teachers, around my friends, around everyone at the college. And overall, it's a very unique experience that I definitely could not get anywhere else. I think that's in the motto. And I'm also on a very generous scholarship, and I wouldn't be able to experience here without that. And thus, I'm very thankful for the experience that I have here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nathaniel, for sharing a little bit about your story. I know that our alumni, parents, and supporters always enjoy the chance to have a bit of a peek through the window of life here on campus today. Thank you to both of our wonderful students for taking the time to share your stories, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We look forward to keeping you updated on news at the college and sharing more student stories and details around our 50th anniversary activities. So please keep an eye out for more information about that. Should you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to me at alumni@pearsoncollege.ca. And thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday, and I hope that you will all have a wonderful week ahead. Bye, everyone.